A very good evening to one and all. Today in our Talk to the Expert series, we have with us Sudha S. Nair ma'am, who is a special educator and has been in this field for more than 2 decades. Ma'am has also set up an autism unit at the Al Noor Center, Dubai, and an SEN unit at the Winchester School, Dubai, where she is also working as a private practitioner since 2005, first in Dubai, UAE, and currently in Pune, India. So now let's welcome Sudha ma'am and know more about her and her experiences.
Thank you so much, Shweta. Nice to be here, and good evening to all who are here participating in this Facebook Live. So tell me, Shweta, where would you like me to begin from?
I'm from your learning center only. So we really want to know more and more about your learning center.
All right, thank you so much. See, the Learning Center is a culmination of my journey in special education and inclusive education. Because as I have gained more and more experience and learned so much from my students themselves, I felt this need to pass it on to others who are joining the field, who are already, there maybe at a younger than me, as well as parents, of course. So SuDhi Learning Centre was set up with the idea of being a training hub. Okay, so apart from the one-to-one sessions that I take for children with global developmental delays, specific learning difficulties, autistic individuals, and anyone, just about anyone who would need, a mentorship in their studies, right? So apart from that, and apart from the group classes, there is this need to, have valid and, I will say evidence-based as well as anecdotal-based training methodologies and teaching methodologies, and more than teaching methodologies, understanding the child. Okay, so before you even go to methodology, you need to understand the child. So there is this gap there, the teaching learning gap. So there are others like me also who are in training. I wouldn't say that it's only me, but it's basically just a training hub. And also wish to expand into providing more services for parents, right? Like say listening circles, or somewhere they can come and vent, perhaps grooming sessions, or something where we can also offer something to the physical and mental well-being of parents, and a place for adolescents. So there's a lot of plans and ideas, and the pandemic just kind of put a kind of a break to actually getting a physical space. So right now we are just an online space, and looking for like-minded people to collaborate and come together, so that we can really have Pune as a place where nobody will say that we don't know where to go, we don't know what to do, and we don't know whom to go to.
Yeah. And that's a very nice point that you have said, that it caters to both the parents as well as the children.
Yeah.
That's really nice, ma'am. You've been a special educator for more than 2 decades. So what is the role of a special educator according to you regarding the development of the child in the spectrum?
Okay. So see, in the life of any child for that matter, there are these developmental milestones, developmental challenges that one goes through from infancy to adulthood.
Yes.
And as long as things appear to be going smoothly, nobody really thinks of a special educator, right? But then there is a situation where, say, some milestones are not, developing as per the regular norm, or developed, like sometimes in case of autistic children, we see that up to the age of 2.5, or 3, they seem to have been developing, achieving their milestones, and then there has been a regression. So that's when actually a special educator steps in, because all is of course not lost, and early intervention is very important, because what people like me do, what we are trained to do, is to develop alternative pathways for learning. Right. So if the child is not learning the way others are learning, then what is the learning style of the child? How do we identify the needs of the child? Identify what are the supports the environment should provide to the child.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's very important because the whole focus is again not on the child. In the minute you hear special education, it is like, okay, there's a special needs child and there's a special educator and the child is going to be fixed or something like that. Not at all. Every
Right.
child is an individual. They have their profile of strengths and weaknesses. They have their reasons, very valid reasons why they are not thriving, maybe. Okay, the
Right.
reasons could be environmental and it could be organic within the child, of course. And we are like a bridge, I would say, the facilitators. A
Right.
special educator should not be such a central figure. The special educator is kind of a facilitator because the
Yes.
central figure is the child, the environment, and
Absolutely.
how that the matching happens. Now,
Right.
how an individual can achieve and their potential in the environment they are put in. So, um, as much as I think it's the profession I belong to, it's necessary, it's needed, and parents have to be guided. But I would still say that we are just facilitators, we are not the central figure, we should not be.
Right, right. Absolutely true, ma'am. And ma'am, once the diagnosis is done, once the parents come to know that the child has this particular problem, then what should be the steps that the parent should follow apart from Googling and collecting the information regarding autism?
I think the very first step would be like, take a deep breath, pause
Yeah.
before, getting into any kind of a frantic, now what to do. Easier said than done, I know.
Right,
But since
right.
you're asking me, I have to say that. But
Yes.
pause is very important before
Very
you take your
important.
next step, right? And Google is, I mean, it's a wealth of information out there. At the same time, it's a little difficult to say that Googling should be what the next step or any step should be. Because two things, information overload. Because sometimes there's just so much, the parents are bombarded with so much information, they do
Yes.
not know where to start. That can sometimes lead to this paralysis of action. Should I do this? Should I do this? I also heard of this, I also heard of that. That person is doing this, let me Google. That doctor is there, this person is there. It just makes parents so overwhelmed sometimes. So
Yeah.
you need to know, like any other tool, how to use Google. What is a valid information there? For a new parent, it might be a little complicated to kind of sift through all the information that this is valid, this is not valid. So I am a little wary of saying Google. At the same time, I will not say don't use Google because all of us do go
We do
online
that.
and search,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
But it should be an informed search and don't rely so much on Google.
Right.
The expert is in front of you, your child. So I would say just take a backseat and observe your child. When is your child happy? When your child is
Mhm.
not seeming so happy, and consult the experts concerned. And there, Shweta, it's very mind-boggling for parents because there is no one person you can go to. It's not like you go to a developmental pediatrician and that person can kind of do everything for you.
Do everything.
Yeah, so you
Absolutely.
need an occupational therapist, you need a sensory integration therapist, you need a remedial teacher, that is another word, special
Yeah.
educator. You would need a speech and language therapist. You need to know that communication is beyond speech and language, just not speech and language. Then, if there is any metabolic issues, you would need a doctor to look into it. You might need a nutritionist and the play therapist, and these things just keep rolling off. Like the developmental pediatrician will say, go to the special educator supposedly. Then the special educator will say, oh, sensory issues. Now you must see a sensory integration therapist.
Yes.
Then it's like, what is the difference between occupational therapy, sensory integration therapy, physiotherapy? The parent is just bogged down by that.
Yes.
But what I would say is just take it step by step. And what I say to the parents who come to me is also ask questions. So whether it's me or any other professional, ask questions like, why are you doing this and how is it going to be beneficial and what makes you think my child needs this? right? How do we chart his progress?
Right.
You know, how are we going to set some goals, and how do we know we're achieving those? What do we do if we don't meet those goals? What do we need to do as a family? And question the person, because none of us frankly need to be sitting as experts. It's a collaboration,
Yes.
right? And one is accountable also to the parent. So I always tell parents, ask questions. So I think that's the best thing. Take a pause, ask questions. Also, very important that you go to a therapist or an educator who kind of wants you there with the child, who's not going to tell you leave the child, shut the door, and
Right.
then pick up the
Right.
child after 45 minutes,
Yeah.
right? So it has to be somebody who's saying that you need to be there with the child, maybe within the room, or there should be a two-way window or a CCTV where you're watching, observing, seeing, and hearing what is happening within that room.
Okay.
So that is very important. And one thing is, Shweta, it's always complicated in the sense that when you work with the child in the presence of the parent, there are certain patterns that have been set between the child and the parent. So it
Right.
might be difficult because to kind of work with the child in front of the parent, okay, I hear this. But I have been doing this since 2005. I have worked with children only in the presence of their parents. It might be
Okay.
difficult, but it's not impossible. Parents have to be there. Another point of view is from the parents' side that they want respite. So the time that the child is with the teacher or the therapist is the time they can go out or do something. But that is a lot of lost time because you need to know what is going to make your child cry. You need to
Yes.
know this adult you are trusting your child with. They are doing right by your child. So very important. I would say be there with your child through all the therapies and the tuitions or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. So that's very important. The interaction of an educator, special educator with the children and with the parents as well.
yes.
Right,
Very.
absolutely, ma'am. And ma'am, what kind of academic or infrastructural supports are a must in an inclusive classroom?
In an inclusive classroom, actually, the very first thing that needs to be there is the mindset. Because
Right.
if the mindset is there, the teacher, the school, the management has the mindset that education is for all, right?
Yeah.
And that schools are creating barriers to learning.
Right.
That realization should be there. It's not that we are doing something special, we are accommodating this child, and we are making all these changes. No, education is for all. School has to realize that school system is creating barriers to learning. How do we, get over these barriers to learning? So as long as mindset doesn't change, it's very difficult to even say. All of us in the field know what accommodations are needed, and we have gone blue in the face saying that maybe you need more of visuals in the
Right.
classroom. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
if you're saying from point of view of an autistic individual who's entering a classroom where language is a barrier or communication is a barrier,
Yeah.
auditory attention might vary. So a visual, having a classroom where there's a bias towards visuals, that is very important. Having a set pattern for the child, preparing the child. So maybe, even saying the schedule or which page number. It can be
Yeah.
as simple as we are doing page number 36 today, right? And that is the kind of support the child needs rather than blankly looking, okay, where do I open my book to or what is
Right. Right.
happening? It just can be that. Uh, Two, it can be preferential seating for the child, maybe somewhere close to the teacher, right?
Right.
So the teacher can also see how it's going. Is the child getting overwhelmed? Is the child understanding? What support does the child need? Does the child need a break?
Yeah.
Right? So that is there. Preferential seating is there. And maybe you can avoid clutter in a classroom again because sometimes certain classrooms tend to get cluttered with too much information, too many boards around, and
Yes.
there's
Yes.
just too much
Absolutely.
going on,
Yeah.
right? So maybe cut down on
Content.
visual clutter. Have visual supports like
Yeah.
maybe the rules, the timetable, how much time each period is going to take, who is the teacher who's going to be coming, and things like that. That is
Right.
visual support. But if there's too much of distractions, that's visual clutter. So
Yeah.
to have a visual heavy classroom, but not it should not be clutter. It should be support.
Something
Then
that
it
is catering to all types of learners, whether it's audio, visual, or kinesthetic,
right,
like.
Yeah, and movement.
And
You kind of
yeah,
set it being
set it.
the movement.
Yeah,
So a child may need a movement break, right? So it is like you get the child to distribute books when you see a child is getting a little restless. Okay, so
right.
distribute books or come and clean the board or take a message to the staff room, something, right?
Yeah,
So it is again when you think of accommodations, it's not always very large physical infrastructure. Starting with the mindset, it is knowing the child, the learning styles, what the
yeah,
child needs, right? And then providing for that. And
absolutely.
classrooms have to be accessible, schools have to be accessible in terms of ramps and lifts and even those, what do you call it, the handrails. Okay, things which we know
Right.
physical accessibility isn't a real priority, but that should be there at the planning level when you're planning out the architecture of a building. You
Yes,
know,
yes.
it should be accessible, and because what happens is then you make the physical structure inaccessible, you make
Hmm.
the classroom inaccessible, you make learning inaccessible because you're not going to change your style. You
Right.
know, 10 out of 15 children are learning this way. I'm catering to those 10 children. These 5 children are not my problem.
Yeah,
If they are,
absolutely.
yeah. So when you do that, you are creating barriers
Yeah,
and then you're locating the problem within the student. So
absolutely.
it all starts with mindset. Then we can think of the physical infrastructure and whatever needs to be done begins now.
Yeah, that's correct, ma'am. And this was in terms of the infrastructure that we have in the school. Now, at home, when the children are there, then many a times, unconsciously parents, they try to control the self-stimulatory
Yeah.
behaviors of the kids. So what should be the right approach for that?
One thing is when someone wants to stop their child from swimming, I'll just share an anecdote with you.
Yeah,
There were young parents, the child was just about, I think, 5 or 6 years old, and he was clapping his hands a lot. So this was in my session. This was when the physical session was still going on.
right.
And one of the parents just kind of in a very in a little raised tone said hands in pockets. Okay, I'm
Okay.
still being a little gentle the way
Yeah.
I'm saying it. So and then immediately the child put the hands in pocket. So I asked that why did you say that? So the thing is that swimming sometimes is stopped because parents feel this makes the child look different than
Different
others.
from others. Yes.
Yeah, I've heard parents say makes my child look autistic. So if I want, so the child doesn't clap, then okay, he's not or she is not autistic.
Yeah.
At the same time, there are parents who encourage in the sense that that's my child's right to swim and I'm not going to stop that. That is their time to swim and let them swim, they need to swim.
Right.
Now, with this person, where the child was clapping the hand and they said the hands in pocket, I asked why? Why is he clapping? So they said no, when he gets anxious, he claps. So
Yeah.
there is a reason for that,
Reason for
right?
that.
Yeah, and you know the reason, but you want to stop this stimming.
Yeah.
So self-stimulatory behavior happens because it's kind of a regulatory mechanism because sometimes the environment is too overwhelming due to any of the inputs, sensory inputs. It could be lights, it could be noise, it could be the people, it could be interaction is being forced on you, eye contact
Right.
is being forced on you, and you're just so overwhelmed you need to still to kind of regain your composure
Yeah.
if you want to just put it in layman's terms. No? Also, sometimes swimming happens because the child doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So there are instances when the child is not really having a full uh, life kind of,
Right.
where there are hobbies or, there are activities to be done apart from sitting at home and watching TV or something like that. In those instances also, self-stimulatory behavior can rise. So we
Right.
need to see why. What is it that, what need is this child trying to fulfill?
Yeah.
One thing I have learned from my students, Shweta, is anything my students do, my students on the autism spectrum, anything they do, there is a reason behind it. They are not random. It is the adults who are random. We just do
Right.
things according to our mood. We're not consistent. But my students, they are very consistent. They are not one bit random. So if you notice something happening, it's because there's a reason.
There's a
And if
reason.
you, yeah, that's
So we need to understand that, and we need to, stop doing that. That.
stop doing what we are doing, not
What
stop
we
doing
are
what the
doing.
child.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely right, ma'am. And for that, I think it's very important for the parents to attend the training sessions. So I want to know about the training session or the parental awareness workshops that you conduct.
Okay. So, initially when I started parent training workshops, I did something called like the first steps to literacy and numeracy, and that was a series. First steps, and then the further steps, and the stepping
Right,
stones.
right.
Series of 5. Because everybody has done maths and English, but teaching maths and English is something different.
It's different.
And yeah, and you also need to know that every stage of learning there's a prerequisite.
Yeah,
So if your child is not doing addition, by giving more and more of addition, you're not going to achieve that. You might achieve rote, but not real understanding, right?
exactly.
So you need to go to the prerequisites. So that is why I started these training workshops so that parents understand that there is something called the prerequisite steps. And if paper and pencil work is not happening, time to ditch the paper and pencil work, go back
Yes.
to activities which will enable this, right? So that
Yeah.
is why that's there. Then I realized, okay, parents, this motivation, reinforcement, then self-regulation, things like this also is very important for parents to know about that, right? How do I reward my child? Because reward is not about giving a chocolate or withdrawing the chocolate or saying
Right.
say go to the garden after you do your homework,
Yeah.
or that becomes like a threat and all that. So parents need to know that, and that's why then there were another series of workshops. So there's always something with parent demand. Somebody wants insights into ADHD, then I come up with a module. So it's parents who keep sometimes saying that we need to know this. So do
Yeah.
you have a module?
And I think parenting is something in which we are learning every day. Every day gives us a new experience and we learn from that. So we can't
True.
say that if somebody is having the same experience, so we can also, incorporate the same with our child also. We can't do
True.
that with our children.
Yeah, very true. What you said is very true because there are so many. Sometimes I do know that parents share the intervention programs, which is
Right.
fine because information is meant to be shared. But you can't apply the same intervention program for your child that somebody else has
Yes.
chalked out for another child. It will just it won't work. It really
Yeah.
won't work. Then what happens is you get into this thing like, oh, my child will not be able to learn. Okay,
Right.
see, when your child is learning something, when you're on a journey, some children may go from A to Z, some may go from A to B, some may go from A to F. But the thing is that, okay, let's try moving from A to B. We've reached B. Now let's see where we can go. And we can't compare everybody's journey
Yes.
because, children, because at puberty also there is the spurt. Sometimes there's this learning spurt along with the growth spurt and the spurt of a lot of challenges. But that is also a period when there can be a learning spurt. And I can go on and on, Shweta. So you will have to actually tell me, whether my answers are becoming too long.
No, no, we actually want to know more and more about all these things to, make ourselves aware and understand that what goes on in a child's mind, because that is very important to understand also. We can't just randomly, put our thoughts or our beliefs there in front of the child and go about it. So we need to understand what is actually going on in a child's mind. So that's really nice that you are coming up with so many things and we are listening to you. It is really helping us a
Thank you.
lot. So, ma'am, once you go through all the developmental stages and you come up with the performance of the child. So, how do you share a child's growth and transformation with the parents?
Okay. See, one thing is that in my sessions, during my sessions, whether online or offline, one parent or both parents are definitely present. So
Right.
there is this daily feedback. There are things which I cannot say in front of the child in the session, so there will be, WhatsApp is there or we message, right? So there is almost constant feedback, which children and with some parents would like a review once in 6 weeks. Then we have a parent meeting
Yeah.
once in 6 weeks, and what I do is that I share a specific objective before start, right?
Okay.
So then that this is what we are going to be doing, and this is what I'm looking for. If I have to give you an example, like say it's a picture talk or something like that, so okay, out of 5 points, that the child is going to give 3 points. with very
Right.
minimum prompts. That's kind of a specific objective. So when you give that to the parent, then the parent also can chart the progress themselves. Yeah, today with very less prompts, he has given 3 points about the picture.
Right.
Okay, till last week, still teacher was prompting or parent was prompting. So then you know that you have achieved something. So you
Yes.
have to set those goals which are measurable. And some of it is very intangible because as you work with children, see, when you work with a child, you're not just working on academics, it's you're working on the emotions, behaviors, like how do I make friends? When I'm saying behavior, it is how do I make friends or how do I take part in something? How am I part of assembly?
Right.
So there are so many intangibles that it's very difficult to also give an accurate measure of their growth because the
Exactly.
pride that the child takes in doing something, the joy they take in discovering, oh, maths is not so bad, okay,
Yeah.
or like being able to go down the steps or go up the steps without a
Right.
buddy
Right.
helping you up,
Yeah.
because of a little anxiety or whatever insecurities, the gravitational insecurity, whatever it is. So these are also very intangible things which you really can't measure, but by virtue of being with the child, you kind to chart it. So
Yeah.
difficult question because the tangibles and the measurables that
Right.
yes can give an answer to the child, to the parent, but there are also
Other
and
aspects.
yeah, like because one of the parents was telling me, and this is what I observed in one of my group classes, that the look in the child's eye had changed, more settled, more aware, happier. You can't measure this.
We can't do that. Absolutely true, ma'am. That's true. So many aspects of a child is involved when he's going for, this type of classes and all. So many things are involved with the child. So any message, ma'am, any particular message that you want to share with the parents, with the audience, with the viewers of?
I'm too small a person to share a message as such. So, what I can say is don't forget to breathe and don't forget to enjoy your child because sometimes the challenges are just so much and life doesn't stop, right? Whatever other challenges are there in life, by virtue of being a human being in this world, all that doesn't stop.
Right.
So it becomes very, 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 very debilitating at times for parents, and hats off to every parent who has a smile on their face and the will to continue. And hats off to those who have kind of succumbed maybe to their despair, because it's not a journey I can talk about or have an advice for. Which is
Yes.
why I said I'm too small to have any kind of message. I can only say please breathe and please know that there are people who are rooting for you all. Right?
Right.
That there are a lot of us who care, because I know a lot of times parents a little hesitant about approaching professionals because see, every profession has the good and the bad, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I just would like to say that there are a whole lot of us, for every bad professional you've met, right, who's say being rude or who has disheartened you, use harsh words to you or your child, or who has not allowed you to be in the room while your child is undergoing the therapy. There are also millions of professionals, right, those who kind of thinking day and night how to kind of change the community, change the system, and working towards it. So even if it might seem like a lonely journey, reach out and you'll find your tribe. And there are a lot of parent support groups as well. Where parents are cheering themselves on. So I think one thing that they should do is take it a step forward and maybe respite care. Okay,
Yes.
respite care is something I don't see happening in India because parents need a break. And
Right.
where do they, go to take a break? Sometimes you need a break from your own child, neurotypical, neurodivergent, whatever it is, you need a break from your children also. So I would just request anybody who's working in the field, like, do think of respite care as well. No message from me. I mean, what can I say?
No, no, but I think whatever you have shared, your experiences and all these things have given a ray of hope to all the parents and all the audience and who all are watching us. I'm sure they will be benefited by all your talks and your experiences also. So thank you so much, Sudha ma'am. It was really wonderful talking to you, knowing you, and the kind of work that you are doing with all kind of children and inclusive classroom, inclusive program that you are going for. So thank you so much, Sudha ma'am. Really, indeed, a pleasure to have you on our platform.
Thank you so much, Shweta. Pleasure to be here, and thank you, Shivali, for thinking of having this FB Live, because there's always so much to talk and learn and share.
Right.
And yeah, Shweta, you've been so nice. You've kept me within the word limit. I know I also had a time limit, which I told you I won't be able to stay beyond a certain time. So thank you for that consideration as well.
Most welcome,
Yeah.
ma'am. That's
Good
a
night.
pleasure. Thank you so
Good
much.
night.
Thanks to our audience. Thank you.